Alright, I'm back with part 5 of the Gronk droid. So, for this video, what I'm going to do is continue to UV this, but I'm probably going to pause it at some point and just finish up the UVs on my own. I don't think you really need to sit through me UVing this whole thing. It's pretty tedious and boring. And I want to get to the part where we do the UV snapshot and bring that into Photoshop. And so, hopefully by the end of this video, we'll get to the UV snapshot part, and then the video after this will be working in Photoshop. So I'm just going to start working, and then, like I said, at some point I will probably pause this and just finish this up on my own. And so I'm going to just do another projection for this. So I'm selecting the faces. Projecting this, and you're probably wondering, well, that's kind of weird that these are at such a different scale, and you are correct. That's weird and not desirable. So at the end of this process, what we're going to do is adjust the scale of these UV shells so that the checkerboard is roughly even everywhere. And the reason for that is we want to have what's called consistent texel density, and texel density is how many pixels per meter in world space or video game space. And you want that to be consistent across basically everything. Otherwise you get areas that are really super sharp detailed and areas that are blurry, and it looks bad. So to maintain consistency, you always try to have a consistent texel density. These guys to a face, and then we do the same here and project this. I've got it's already set to be a camera projection, so I just point the camera at sort of what seems like the best face for projecting it, and just go for it. And then what I'm going to do, and so I look at this front edge as kind of the most important face, or faces in this particular object. The rest of the stuff recedes into the darkness, and it'll probably be full of textured with grime and stuff. So I just want to pin this face and keep it intact, and then unfold the rest of it. And I don't know if Max has that functionality. I'm guessing it probably does, but there are probably other ways to sort of address that. I think that's it for this part. Let's do this part, just change it up a little bit, because I don't think I covered cylindrical mapping. So when you're doing a projection, you have a couple of options. You can do a planar projection, which is like a camera, or you can also do what's called a cylindrical projection. And that projects it in a roughly cylinder shape. And you can see some faces that I forgot to delete. So now's a good time to catch all those faces that you forgot. And get rid of those, don't need them. And now we've got this. So because this is a cylinder, the cylindrical projection is kind of an obvious choice. We could have face projected it too and just unwrapped it that way, but it just it lends itself to this type of projection. But you notice that the checkerboard is kind of squashed, and I don't know why it doesn't come in looking better than that, but unfortunately it doesn't. So I can just go in and manually adjust it using the same scale tools that you would use for adjusting mesh. I think I'll do one more thing. and then pause it and then wrap this up on my own. One thing I wanted to do, kind of show you also, is so we could cylindrical map this, and that probably makes sense for part of it. So let's go ahead and do that. Although it's coming in wonky, so I'm going to adjust how the cylindrical map is oriented. So now it's like a tube. So definitely some wonkiness going on there, but we'll fix that. And so what I want to do is, actually let's do it this way. So I'll leave the outside as cylindrical map, and then I'll planar project this front part just to make it easier. Move that out of the way for now. Now I've got this outside part, and unfold it. Snap it and unfold it. How do I want to do this? Scale it. And then we'll do like a final scale at the end when we arrange everything in the UV space. And I'll come back to this guy. And then there we go. So we just kind of piece it together like that. The other important aspect of this I wanted to show you is do yourself a favor and try to save yourself time and energy and heartache. And by that I mean make use of the ability to duplicate and delete things. I know that this is exactly the same as this, okay? And rather than UV the same shape again, I'm just going to delete it. Now that I have a UV'd version of this, duplicate it, and drag it down, and now I've got, that's basically UV'd as well. Although now we can separate them if we want, or we can keep them together and move them together. So that's it for, I think, the demo of the UV part. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video now, finish up the UVs on my own, and then we'll address the laying them out and then taking a UV snapshot. Okay, so I've wrapped up the initial phase of UVing on this guy. And now what we're going to do is lay these out in the 0 to 1 space so that we can do a UV snapshot and bring that into Photoshop. So the first thing I want to do though is go through and just make sure that everything is at roughly the same resolution. So I'm going to go and I'm going to scale these so that the checkerboard pattern is basically the same size, more or less on everything. And there are some tools in Maya that'll do this, but that's totally fine to just do it by hand. I don't know that Max has the exact same tools. And so, and we're just going to get it pretty close. It doesn't have to be, perfect. And I think that looks pretty good. So now we've got all these things, and we need to lay them out in here in a way that makes sense for us to work on them. And for this phase as well, there are tools that will lay out your UVs in the 0 to 1 space, but I kind of prefer to do it by hand. most of the time, because it doesn't always lay them out in a way that makes sense for painting the textures. And what I mean by that is sometimes you want things that are the same, or things in the same area to be next to each other, or sometimes you want things that are of the same material to be next to each other. And in this case, what I want is to keep objects that are same, in space. I want them to be close together so that I know what object I'm painting in Photoshop. And so I'm going to, for example, I'm going to keep these guys together, and keep them close to this top part. And the same goes for these. So I'll find them, and I'll let these remain overlapping. So I just have to paint one. If you have details painted in that look really like they stand out, then you can go back and change it. But for now, I'm fine with it being there. And then so this guy, I kind of want it to be over here next to this thing, which is where the slot that it fits into. And then all these, let's see if we can find all of them. So here's this thing. So we'll just bring these guys in close to that. This is kind of its own little thing, so I'll just move it off to the side for now. So the leg and the foot, let's move them together. And let's see where we're at. So let's get this out of the way. This out of the way. In a way, this is almost like a game of Tetris or something. You kind of go in, arrange things as best you can, and this is kind of an awkward shape. We won't be making use of the UV space as much as we would like. Inevitably, it's going to be defined by these big pieces. And so what I'm going to do is move this out of the way and then fit this in here. And that is probably the optimal way to fit both of these big pieces in a square shape. And I'm just guessing based on kind of experience. And then so I'll move everything else around it in a way that, as much as possible in a way that makes sense, keeping things that I want to keep together. And that can fit in here. Okay, and so I'm guessing that's probably as good as it's going to get, although we can keep futzing with it. And now what I'm going to do is scale this all down until it fits into the 0 to 1 space, and I can tell where that is, display my image, and I can also see these grid lines are numbered. And so this is how you would set up UVs to UV something in the, like if you were going to paint a texture in the 0 to 1 space. And this is where you might deviate if you're using tile textures. You could scale these things beyond the 0 to 1 space and it would work okay. And so the next video, what we're going to do is take a snapshot and then bring that into Photoshop.